y'all, and welcome back to my channel. I know, getting a video out in less than 2 months. Amazing, right? But I wanted to get a new video out this month as I am moving at the time of recording this, so I need to get the microphone and my computer packed away at some point, but I have just enough time where I can record something so I don't leave y'all stranded for like months at a time as I'm prone to doing, which is why we've got this video. Probably at the time you're seeing this, it's like either late February or early March. But hi, hello. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jax, and I am your local nerd and Transformers connoisseur. And welcome back, or welcome to, the ABCs of Transformers, a educational series on the vocabulary and terminology of Transformers canon and fanon. In today's video, we will be going over the different types of continuities and media throughout the Transformers franchise, the games, the cartoons, the comics, and more. Now, this video probably won't cover absolutely every single continuity and piece of media that Transformers has because, oh my god, this franchise is 40 years old and it has a shit ton of content. I cannot ever possibly get to all of it, and there are maybe even some series that aren't even worth putting in the document simply because they are so underground and so niche that only a very handful of fans will actually know what those specific pieces of media are. Of course, though, I bend that rule a little bit with some of my personal exceptions. BotBots, I love you so much. So this is just a disclaimer that not every continuity and piece of media will be in this video nor on the Google document. So don't come for me in the comments saying, why didn't you do this obscure piece of media? Because I either don't know it exists or it's kind of not worth listing because you're the only person who came into my comments talking about this. I'm joking. I'm being very lighthearted about this, but yeah. Just a disclaimer. A few other acknowledgements and disclaimers before we get into the rest of the video. Firstly, thank y'all so much for all of the critique, advice, and coming into my comments section and either correcting me or offering better definitions that I gave in my last video on the anatomy and biology of Transformers. I appreciate it so dearly. And I took a lot of notes from y'all's comments that I have put at the end of this video for any terms that I either didn't explain well in my last video or terms that I missed. For example, alt mode specific terms, which I completely left out and totally forgot that, yeah, that's a very important part of Transformers, is knowing even alt mode specific terms for the anatomy and biology of them. That's really important, and I forgot. I just forgot. So thank you to everyone piping up in the comments. I really appreciate it. And again, this project is kind of a community-based effort. And y'all are absolutely free in this video in case, again, I explain things badly or if I miss something that is very obvious. Pop it down in the comments and I will absolutely get around to reading them and address those errors in the next video or put them onto the big Google Doc master list. But at the end of this video, I have tagged on all of the anatomical and biological terms, or at least a good chunk of them that I missed or didn't explain well in the last video at the end of this video. So the timestamp is here in case you want to scoot on over to that. And now the big important disclaimers. This list is not spoiler free, especially since we are going through the different continuities in Transformers. While I am trying to make things as spoiler free as possible, that is not always the case because I will babble. I'll just babble and I won't even realize I'm saying spoilers because I just babble. So apologies for that. And secondly, while this video series is decently PG, kind of, I was probably more PG-13 with how much I swear. Some of the content in this video will be darker or for more mature audiences, so please be aware as you are watching this video. And now, without any further ado, let's get right into it. We already went over a few pieces of continuity and media in the general vocab list, so there will be some repeats here just to refresh y'all's memory, but this video will go more into depth with the different types of continuity and pieces of media that we have in the Transformers franchise. The aligned continuity. The aligned continuity is one of the largest continuities in the Transformers franchise, encasing such series as Transformers Prime, Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015, The Covenant of Primus, the Transformers Exodus Trilogy, the War for Cybertron games, RescueBots, and RescueBots Academy. The aligned continuity, as I also said in my general vocab video, is also one of the messiest continuities due to its sheer size. And even though a lot of series within the aligned continuity are very similar in many ways, there's a lot of lore aspects or like characterizations that just cause confusion and continuity errors across this continuity. But it is still one of the most well-loved continuities in the fandom, especially for housing some of the most beloved series in the franchise like TFP and the War for Cybertron games. The Bayverse. The Bayverse is the continuity encasing all of the Transformers live-action films directed by Michael Bay. This includes Transformers 2007, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, Transformers Dark of the Moon, Transformers Age of Extinction, and Transformers The Last Knight. These movies were a big reason that the Transformers franchise became as popular as it is today, as these movies were produced during a time where Transformers was kind of having this quiet period, where nothing really stuck with whatever they were throwing at the wall with audiences and even general audiences. So a large portion of the fan base that we have today, we have to thank the Bayverse continuity for. As much as I hate to say that myself because I have opinions about the fucking Bayverse. Ooh. And with that being said, these films are either, depending on which side of the fan base you're on, regarded as nostalgic classics or garbage. And even though I'm not a person who really likes the Bayverse films that much anymore, I do definitely still have a soft spot, as even for someone like me, this was my introduction point to Transformers back when I was still a very young child. So we have to give props to it, I guess. Next up, Beast Wars. Beast Wars is the continuity and franchise containing all of the toy lines, cartoons, and pieces of media during the Beast era of Transformers. Beast Wars was another franchise similarly to the Bayverse that was responsible for putting Transformers back on the map post the Generation 1 era. The main marketing gimmick of Beast Wars toys and the cartoons being Transformers who could transform into different types of organic alt modes, ranging from animals, insects, and dinosaurs. This is also the continuity that introduced us to the Maximals and the Predacons, the Beast Wars counterpart to the Autobots and Decepticons. This continuity and franchise is very well beloved in a majority of the fan base, and is another contributor for the fan base we have today. The Beast Wars cartoon of which is still held very highly within the fandom today, in spite of its more dated and clunky animation that it's known for now. Beast Wars was also the first fully CGI animated cartoon in the Transformers franchise, and would become a testament to what the Transformers franchise would create later on with CGI animation, like Transformers Prime and TF1. The Beast Wars continuity also includes things like Beast Machines, the Beast Wars IDW comics, and as well as a few video games, which was interesting to learn about. BotBots. BotBots was a franchise started in 2018 featuring original and smaller Transformers characters who could transform into everyday household objects or food, decorations, etc. Currently under the BotBots continuity, we have the BotBots Netflix cartoon, first released in 2022, and they have hinted at the end of the first season that there might be a second season, and personally, I'm really hoping that there will be. I very highly recommend the BotBots cartoon if you just want something silly, goofy, and fun, or something nice to put on for the kids. It's a very silly, goofy, fun series, and I had a lot of fun watching it personally, even though I'm an adult. Don't get on me about watching BotBots. I know y'all are sitting here watching Bluey. I say that with love. I also love Bluey. Transformers Cyberverse. Transformers Cyberverse was a cartoon and toy line released back in 2018, ending in 2021. It is most well known for the Cyberverse cartoon, also known as Bumblebee's Cyberverse Adventures, which was a very lighthearted, fun, and bright and animated series, following Bumblebee and other characters on adventures across Earth and Cybertron, while also maybe battling some Decepticons along the way. Depending on who you ask in the fandom, this is a cartoon and series that is either really hated or really, really loved. It is an extreme 50-50 split. For me personally, I quite like Cyberverse. I'm not insane about it, but it is a fun series. I do recommend going and giving the cartoon a watch, definitely. Dreamwave. Dreamwave is the continuity that refers to all of the Transformers comics published under Dreamwave Productions from 2001 to 2005. It includes comics and continuities such as the Generation 1 Dreamwave continuity, as well as the Unicron Trilogy comics. EarthSpark. Transformers EarthSpark was a cartoon and toy line first released in 2022. The cartoon of which follows the adventures of Robbie and Mo as they discover an energon spring near their house, in which follows the creation of the Terrans, and they all learn what it means to be a true family. While this show was initially praised for breaking the mold of what the Transformers franchise had been up until this point, usually the Autobots versus the Decepticons, so on and so forth, Megatron's the bad guy, and switching up a lot of these stereotypical plot points and putting a new and original twist on them, as well as I mentioned, introducing new and original characters, having wonderful and meaningful writing, as well as awesome queer representation, as well as housing the first non-binary character in the Transformers franchise, Nightshade. However, its later episodes and seasons have been heavily criticized due to the obvious drop in quality, animation, and writing. In spite of this, it's still decently loved in a younger part of the fanbase, including on my side of the fanbase, for everything that it did and tried to do in its first season, as well as the wonderful queer representation that we did have. Generation 1, or G1. Generation 1 is the continuity that encases all of the original Transformers content, including the Marvel comics, the original cartoon, and movie. G1 or Generation 1 can also sometimes be used to refer to everything under the G1 continuity family, which includes things like the IDW comics and the Skybound comics. It can also be used to refer to anything in the Generation 1 umbrella, including Generation 1 all the way to Generation 3. Generation 2 and 3. Generations 2 and 3 are the generations that came after G1, encasing series and toy lines like the Headmasters and Victory. While these generations were not as well loved as the initial first generation, it is something that is either still being rediscovered by new fans or being nostalgically remembered by older fans. In Generation 2, the English dub of the Headmasters cartoon is horrendous, and I highly recommend giving it a watch just for the laughs. IDW 1. IDW 1 is the continuity that encases all of the Transformers comics in IDW Publishing's first run. This includes the main line, the Transformers run, and some of the most popular comics within IDW Publishing's license time, More Than Meets the Eye, Lost Light, and the Wreckers Trilogy. IDW 1 is also one of the largest continuities in the Transformers franchise due to the sheer amount of comics that were published during this time, all the way from 2005 to 2018. And if you didn't know, that's a really long time to hold a license for. The IDW run is heralded as one of the most famous continuities within the fandom, especially for the comics More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light. This continuity is also well known for the amount of queer representation it has within its comics, encasing a majority of the queer characters that we know and love today in Transformers, such as RC and Aileron, Cyclonus and Tailgate, and Drift and Ratchet. IDW 2. IDW 2, also sometimes referred to as IDW 2019, was IDW Publishing's second run of the Transformers comics, running from 2019 to 2022 as a fresh reboot on the franchise. This continuity includes comics such as The Transformers, Transformers Galaxies, Transformers War's End, and Transformers Wreckers, Treads and Circuits. IDW 2 was nowhere near as popular as IDW's first run of comics, these comics often being compared against IDW's first run. But these comics are still talked about every so often within the fan base today. I apologize very much for what you are about to listen to right now. Here's the timestamp in case you want to skip this particular continuity. Kiss Players. Again, I'm so sorry. Kiss Players was a radio drama and manga published from 2006 to 2007, featuring the characters known as Kiss Players, who could fuse with Transformers by kissing them. And while that in and of itself isn't a bad thing, it's simply a silly thing, more so what this series is known for is the amount of explicit and lewd and graphic content within it. Known for playing into fetishistic lolicon tropes with the Kiss Players and the other Transformers, including Optimus Prime and my boy, Rodimus. Thank you, Chris McFeely, for that YouTube video that I had to watch just for this. And the reason that it's here is because you will eventually learn about Kiss Players in this fanbase. It's gonna come up sooner or later. Might as well rip off the band-aid for y'all. But yeah, everyone in the fanbase just likes to conveniently forget that this piece of media exists, including myself. And now we move on and we forget again. The Nightverse. The Nightverse is the continuity that contains all of the Transformers live-action films post-Michael Bay's departure. This includes films such as the 2018 Bumblebee movie, as well as the most recent live-action movie, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. The Nightverse specifically got its name from the director of the Bumblebee movie, Travis Knight. Marvel Comics and Marvel UK. The Marvel UK and US run were the very first Transformers comics that we ever got. Beginning in 1984, these comics originated a lot of things for the Transformers franchise, from characters to characterizations to pieces of lore and more. And in spite of its age now, these comics are still well beloved within the modern day fanbase. These comics are also especially important as they were either the starting point or big inspirations for a lot of the official creators we have today, like James Roberts, Simon Furman, Bob Budiansky, and Nick Roche. Prime Wars. Prime Wars was a toy line started in 2014 and a cartoon starting in 2016 running till 2018. Originally produced by Machinima Productions, this cartoon was not well received. The toy lines for the Prime Wars trilogy were already out for quite a while before this cartoon came into existence, so this particular continuity had kind of run its course once the cartoon came out. The cartoons of which include Combiner Wars, Titan's Return, and Power of the Primes. The cartoon is especially criticized for its poor writing and characterizations, and one of the only things that really keeps getting brought back up other than its sheer not greatness is the fact that Megatron was one of the best iterations of Megatron that we've ever had in the Transformers franchise. There was a whole, I think, 15-minute YouTube video that I have watched so much just for all of the Megatron clips because he's genuinely so good. And that's all I've watched of Prime Wars, by the way. Transformers Rescue Bots. Transformers Rescue Bots was a franchise started in 2011 targeting a younger demographic of Transformers fans between the ages of 3 and 5, I think it is. Rescue Bots includes the cartoon Rescue Bots as well as its sequel, Rescue Bots Academy. There's a particular chunk of the fan base that really adores the original Rescue Bots cartoon. And the compliments that I've heard towards this show are that the writing is actually really spectacular, the characters are fun and lovable, and the humor is actually really funny. I can't really say anything myself because I haven't watched these cartoons for myself, but apparently they're really highly regarded, so definitely go give that a watch if you don't mind watching something that's for younger audiences. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Bluey enjoyers from a fellow Bluey enjoyer. Go watch Rescue Bots. It's apparently really good. Rescue Bots also acts as a sequel to the cartoon Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015. Shattered Glass. The Shattered Glass continuity is an alternate universe swapping the traditional roles of the Autobots and Decepticons, where now the Autobots are the evil villains of the franchise and the Decepticons are the heroic and brave heroes. The Shattered Glass continuity initially started as a fan-made comic, published as an exclusive Collectors Club comic for the 2008 BotCon convention, and since then it has massively grown in popularity, eventually getting its own official miniseries under IDW Publishing in 2021. Highly recommend you give the Shattered Glass comics a read. They're really good. Skybound. Skybound is the continuity that encases all of the current Transformers comics published under Skybound Entertainment. This includes the comics, the mainline Transformers, as well as Void Rivals. These particular comics are known for their darker and grittier retelling of the Transformers story. Transformers Animated. Transformers Animated, often shortened to TFA, was a toy line and cartoon running from 2007 to 2008. The cartoon of which is highly regarded today for its unique art style, original ideas and retelling of the Transformers story, and memorable characters. This was actually the cartoon that cemented Ratchet being a grumpy old man. But in spite of TFA's very positive reception, the cartoon was cancelled after only 3 seasons. However, much of the pre-production from this show has survived, including in things like the AllSpark Almanac, as well as other artists and creators posting their concept art or reading out scripts at conventions, of which a script reading of what would have been the first 3 episodes of season 4 was read at TF Nation back in 2019, which was then re-uploaded in 2023 onto TF Nation's official YouTube channel. I haven't watched it myself. I really should, especially because TFA was a really big part of my childhood and was another large introduction point for Transformers for me. So definitely go check out the YouTube video if you would like to learn more about TFA. Transformers Devastation. Transformers Devastation, released in 2015, was a tie-in game to the Combiner Wars toy line, and it, alongside the War for Cybertron games, is one of the most well-beloved games in this franchise. It is highly praised for its nostalgic and sleek G1 appearance, and fun gameplay, including voice work from a good chunk of the original G1 cast, including Frank Welker and Peter Cullen. I actually happen to have it on DVD myself. I highly recommend it if you just want some really fun gameplay and something that isn't too heavily story intensive. Transformers Exodus. Transformers Exodus was the first part of a trilogy novel series starting in 2010, followed by Transformers Exiles and Transformers Retribution. This trilogy series provides an origin story for the characters of Optimus Prime and Megatron, as well as the start of the Autobot-Decepticon War, and what happened in between them arriving on Earth in Transformers Prime. I have Exodus on hand. It's currently packed away, like I said, moving, but I definitely recommend giving Exodus a read if you like learning about the origins of things, or if you like to see retellings of origin stories, if you want to have more Megatron or Optimus content, or if you're like me and you read it for the Megop content, as well as some extra lore. Definitely give the series a try. Transformers 1. Transformers 1, also known as TFO or TF1, is the first fully animated, theatrically released film that we have had since the original G1 movie. Released in 2024, it follows the adventures of a young Megatron and Optimus Prime, then dubbed Orion Pax and D16, as they journey to the surface and uncover the secrets of their world. This film is planned to be the start of a trilogy for this series, and I truly hope we do actually get that trilogy, especially with how wonderful TF1 was. Definitely go give this movie a watch if you just want something that is like a fun time, but also a genuinely good origin story for the characters of Optimus Prime and Megatron, as well as characters like Alita 1 and Bumblebee. And I truly do hope we do actually get a sequel to this film, especially with how much it struggled in the box office. This film deserves a sequel so badly. Transformers Prime. Transformers Prime, often abbreviated to TFP, is one of the most beloved franchises in Transformers, most well known for its cartoon of the same name, and is highly praised for its level of quality, animation, storytelling, and characters, including housing some of the most favorite interpretations of characters like Optimus Prime and Megatron. Transformers Prime also introduced one of the most popular characters in the fan base, Knockout. TFP also includes the TV premiere movie Predacons Rising, which acted as the official ending for the Transformers Prime cartoon. Transformers Robots in Disguise 2001. Transformers Robots in Disguise 2001, also known as Car Robots in the Japanese release, also known as RID 2001, was the first Japanese original cartoon in the Transformers franchise. It follows the adventures of the Autobots as they disguise themselves as everyday vehicles in order to protect Earth from the evil Megatron. It is definitely one of the more underground series within the Transformers franchise, but you will definitely see memed photos or screen caps of this series due to its very comedic tone and nature. Like, there's one particular scene that you will see especially reblogged on Tumblr that's of, I don't know if they're Autobots or Decepticons, but it's just these group of mechs sweeping the forest floor, and they're like, yeah, we love this. This is so cool and fun. Wow, we should do this more often. It's so dumb and silly. Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015. And yes, you do have to follow up RID with 2015 or 2001 because we have two series of the same name in this franchise. Transformers really loves to reuse the same names for shit. Robots in Disguise 2015, often abbreviated to RID 2015, as I said, is the sequel series to Transformers Prime and Predacons Rising, following the adventures of Bumblebee and his Cybertronian police force on Earth, as they work to apprehend Decepticon prisoners. Now, in spite of its sequel title, it's more of a spiritual successor to Transformers Prime, of which, oh yes, it has been criticized for due to its lack of connections, lack of references to Transformers Prime, including sometimes even just ignoring or retconning certain things that happened in Transformers Prime. It's decently hated in the fan base. However, there is still a good chunk of the fan base that does absolutely adore this cartoon. I am one of those people. Definitely, if you plan to watch this cartoon, it is up on the official Transformers channel if you would like to go and give it a watch, as well as TFP. It's another silly, fun series, nothing too intense, but definitely don't go into it expecting it to be a direct sequel to TFP. It's really not. The Unicron Trilogy. The Unicron Trilogy encases the toy lines and animes Transformers Armada, Transformers Energon, and Transformers Cybertron. This was the first Japanese-American co-production in the Transformers franchise and featured such prolific voice actors as David Kaye as Megatron and Gary Chalk as Optimus Prime. In spite that this series was released during Transformers' quiet period before the Bay films, there are people like myself who grew up with this series and still really love it to this day, especially because it is very heavily anime. You can definitely tell this was a Japanese co-production. And I say that with so much love. That's one of the reasons that I really loved this series growing up, especially since I was such a big weeb in the past. War for Cybertron cartoons. And yes, guess what? I have to make that distinction because Transformers used the same name for another series. War for Cybertron was a toy line first launched in 2018, and later in 2020 received a cartoon produced by Rooster Teeth and Hasbro. The Trilogy series was published on Netflix as Siege, Earthrise, and Kingdom, and was marketed as a darker, more mature Transformers series. However, that wound up being its biggest downfall. Rather than feeling like a mature, darker, more adult Transformers series, it wound up landing somewhere between edgy and boring, and has been criticized for its poor writing, as well as interesting vocal performances. War for Cybertron games. War for Cybertron was a toy line and game series started in 2010. These games of which were some of the first AAA style games that we have ever had in the franchise, which included things like a darker storyline and gameplay and lore with a larger scope. There were 2 games published in this franchise, the first being War for Cybertron in 2010, and the second, Fall of Cybertron in 2012. These games follow the story of a wartime Cybertron where you get to play as multiple different characters from both Autobot and Decepticon sides, respectively, including Megatron, Starscream, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Bumblebee, Grimlock, Optimus Prime, as well as a few others. These games are the most highly regarded games in the franchise, praised for their level of world building, lore, their well-written characters, gameplay, and more. I actually happen to have the second game that was gifted to me a few years back, and while I don't have an Xbox 360, that's definitely something I need to get because these games are impossible to find anymore. I think they originally had maybe Fall of Cybertron or War for Cybertron up on Steam at one point, but that was eventually taken off the Steam store, which is really sad and just like a testament to why archiving stuff like this is so important, especially because games are really, really easy to lose once a system becomes outdated. So I am glad that I at least have this and I don't have to spend hundreds of dollars to try and find this copy at least. And I think that's everything that's on the document so far. Again, if I didn't explain something well or if there's a correction that needs to be made, pop it down in the comments and let me know, and I will get on to correcting it in the next video. But now that we have that chunk out of the way, it's time to go put my doctor's coat back on again. And your doctor has arrived. I don't have my medic pin this time, it's packed away. So let's get on to the rest of the anatomical and biological terms for Transformers. Actuator. An actuator is a mechanical component on a Transformer that activates certain processes or movements. Think of it kind of like an on switch or a start button. It's what activates the rest of the biological processes that allows Transformers to do things like vent, jump, run, shoot, etc. Aileron. Now, I know I did this one in the last video, but I was really bad at explaining what an aileron does, and this lovely commenter came into the comments to give a clarification. So I'll be echoing what they said here. Ailerons are a small movable flap on the wings of a Transformer, usually seen on those with aerial alt modes. These help with the lift of a Transformer. It helps them to ascend and descend from the ground and sky. Blaster. Not the character, sadly. Blasters are pretty simple. They're a type of weapon and gun that a Transformer can use, used by both sides, Autobot and Decepticon alike. Door wing. Door wings are usually doors on Transformers with car alt modes that, when in bot mode, jut out similarly to wings like those with aerial alt modes. We most commonly see these on mechs like Prowl and Bluestreak. Dorsal fin. A dorsal fin is a fin-like protrusion on a Transformer, usually seen on those with aerial alt modes. Dorsal fins help with the overall stability of a Transformer when in their alt mode. Cannon or fusion cannon. A cannon is a type of weapon or gun usually seen on Transformers with tank alt modes, whereas a fusion cannon more specifically is Megatron's signature weapon. Fusion cannons use nuclear energy in order to create large and powerful blasts, hence the name fusion, nuclear fission. Kibble. Yes, this is another term I did in the last video, but I completely fucked it up. This was pointed out to me by this lovely commenter. Thank you so much for coming into my comment section and clarifying that for me. I completely forgot that there was a whole TFWiki page dedicated to kibble, so my bad. And while I'm not saying that the definition of kibble that I gave in the last video is necessarily incorrect, it's also not particularly correct either. So let's go over that again here. So what kibble usually actually refers to is when pieces from a Transformer's alt mode that, when in bot mode, don't really have a purpose for being there and or can be kind of just clunky and are just kind of there because there's nowhere else for those pieces to go. They usually don't serve any higher functional purpose when in bot mode. They can simply just be there for aesthetic, or again because the piece had nowhere else to fit. Proper examples of kibble would be something like door wings on mechs like Prowl and Bluestreak again, or Grimlock's T-Rex arm pieces on his back there. Kibble can also sometimes have a few different meanings depending on context. Again, the definition I gave isn't necessarily incorrect and is simply one way that kibble can be interpreted. But another example is that kibble can also represent, when a transformer is in alt mode, all of the pieces which are poorly hidden in that form. For example, like pieces you would see underneath a Transformers toy when you have them transformed. You especially can see these on figurines like Dinobot, whose legs are all scrunched up underneath and it looks a little clunky. But yeah, kibble is another one of those terms where it really depends on context about what exactly it's referring to and what it means. Propellers. Propellers are a circular bladed component usually seen on mechs with an aquatic-based alt mode. This helps to propel them through liquid or gas by pushing or pulling at the matter. We see these most notably on mechs like Nautica and Sea Spray. Smokestacks. A smokestack is a type of long pipe or tube that helps to expel hot air, gases, or steam, and of course smoke as well. These are most often seen on mechs with large rig or truck alt modes like Optimus Prime and Ultra Magnus. Spark bonding. This was a term that I was originally going to put in the valve plug terminology video. However, again, similarly to plugs and ports, this is not something that is inherently NSFW, and I think is still important to go over just as a general anatomical and biological term, though this is something you very often see used in NSFW contexts. But spark bonding is the act of bonding two sparks metaphysically. Typically, the way this is done is you have two transformers, though this can be performed with more than two transformers, who bear their sparks to one another, so they open their spark casing to one another. How exactly the spark bond is made beyond this point is up to interpretation. Sometimes you have to physically touch the spark, or sometimes it is simply a verbal confession. It is something that's highly dependent on context and interpretation. But after all parties give their consent, a connection is made between the two or more sparks, and this is what we would call a bonded pair. Some fanon interpretations interpret this as a form of marriage, similar to what conjux ritus is in the IDW continuity, though again, this can be up to individual fanon interpretation and what you want spark bonding to exactly represent in this. It is usually an extremely intimate and vulnerable ritual, due to the fragile nature of sparks and due to this process usually being very rarely performed within fanon. And when I say rarely performed, I don't mean as in you don't see it a lot in fan fiction. I mean as in people headcanon in Transformers culture that spark bonding is rarely done, or that it's something that only the older generations of Transformers kind of know about or understand. But spark bonding, like I said, is a very intimate and vulnerable process because you are literally putting your faith and trust in your partner to not kill you in this moment, basically. And it's also the act of literally bearing oneself open to them. Again, it is a showing of trust, it is a showing of intimacy. Another thing that highly depends on fanon interpretation is exactly what a bonded pair of sparks can do or experience. In some interpretations, some spark bonded pairs can experience the same physical or emotional sensations that their partner is experiencing, or can even hear their thoughts, experience their emotions. And while we typically see spark bonding happen between romantic couplings, this is not inherently something that is done for romantic purposes. It can simply be, again, a showing of intimacy, closeness, and trust between a pair or more. Transformers can spark bond to anyone, whether it's for platonic, romantic, or queer platonic reasons. And spark bonding sometimes happens for religious or cultural reasons, though most often we do see this in romantic contexts. Spark bonding can also be a term used to refer to when a spark bonds to a protoform, so when a spark is being birthed, when a transformer is being created. Speaker. A speaker is a type of sound system that allows Transformers to play music similarly to what our speakers do, or can be used as a type of weapon, creating sonic blasts and waves. We usually see and more so hear these on mechs with sound-based alt modes, like Synthwave, who usually has more of an internal speaker system, whereas on a mech like Blaster, he has the speakers built into his legs. Spoiler. A spoiler is a type of component usually seen on transformers with car alt modes, especially on those with speedier or sportier alt modes. Spoilers specifically help to decrease the amount of drag a transformer experiences in their alt mode, helping them to increase their speed. Tape deck. A tape deck is basically a cassette player or radio. I probably need to explain what a cassette player is. There's gonna be some Gen Alphas on this video who don't know what that is. So, tape deck and cassette player are a synonymous word. They mean the same thing. But the basics of it is that a tape deck or a cassette player is a type of portable sound system. The things that people had before we had the phones that we have today that can literally do anything that a computer can. God, I literally remember having cassettes as a kid and putting them into the cassette player on the radio that we had. We most often see tape decks on mechs like Soundwave and Blaster, who do actually literally have mini-cons who can transform into cassettes. A tape deck can also be a type of storage unit or almost a type of subspace. Again, hence in Soundwave and Blaster's case with their mini-cons who most often transform into their cassette alt modes in order to fit into the tape deck. Wheels. Wheels are a mechanical component on a transformer that, when in their alt mode, can be used to propel them forwards or back or steer them in certain directions. They're often made up of metal and rubber and are usually seen on those with car-type alt modes. However, we do have some aerial alt modes who also can have wheels because, you know, the plane's gotta land somehow. And I think that is finally everything. Again though, if there are any obvious terms that I missed out on, definitely pop it down into the comments and I will absolutely add it to the Google Doc. I probably will not be making another end sequence like this to anatomy and biology. I'm done adding this in for now. But thank you all so much for sticking around for another video. I really hope you have been enjoying this series once again, and I hope that you learned something from today's video or enjoyed simply listening to me ramble. If you would like to check out the other videos in this series or more of my Transformers or nerdy content, absolutely click that subscribe button below. Now, I hope you are having a good day, and remember, if not, I'm sending you spoons. Till all are one, and peace through tyranny. Bye!